Almost 3 years ago, I took my first steps into the world of Warcraft. I had played a little bit of classic World of Warcraft at the time, the version of the game as it was back when it released in 2004, but never in my life had I ever played the true World of Warcraft. And given how much I had been enjoying Classic, I thought the modern version, usually just called Retail WoW, would be a slam dunk. Instead, I got to level 30, and I quit. The story was a total mess, the world was confusing and empty, and the dozens of menus and systems were completely overwhelming. It all felt like I wasn't supposed to be there, like the game was only made for people who had already been playing for years.
You know what's really neat about the BFA storyline? It sucks. It's boring and I hate it.
It's an awkward experience that plenty of other people have had, and like those people, I decided to end my World of Warcraft journey early. Until now. This hour-long sponsor-free disaster would not have been possible without the support of my Patreon. All of their names are on the screen right now, and if you'd like to be one of those people, you can support me at the link in the description for as low as $1 a month. You see, World of Warcraft is pretty strange for an MMORPG in that the leveling progression is kind of disgusting. It's like the crust on a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It's a small little bit in the way of getting to the real delicious center. But the leveling is not the point of this video. In fact, the leveling is the exact opposite of the point, because I'm recording this the night before World of Warcraft's newest expansion, Midnight, launches. Okay, full disclosure, it actually launched 3 days ago for people who gave the most wealthy company on Earth extra money for early access, but for the rest of us poors, the game launches tomorrow. So I think now is the perfect time for me to finally power through the god-awful leveling of retail World of Warcraft to finally see what this game has to offer. I mean, it's gotta be popular for a reason, and to keep myself interested in this game and to keep you interested in this video, I've set 3 goals to determine if I've successfully completed World of Warcraft. The first goal is an easy one. I want to hit the expansion's max level of 90, which is, luckily for me, super easy for 2 reasons. The first is that going from level 80 to level 90 is super quick via the expansion campaign, which takes you there basically for free while you walk through the story. The second reason it's going to be quick is because Blizzard was kind enough to bundle a level 80 boost with my purchase of the expansion. That means I get to skip straight from level 1 to level 80 without having to do any of that awful leveling content I was just talking about. So thank you, Blizzard, for letting me pay to not play your game. Wait, that's why Blizzard keeps the leveling bad, isn't it? So you pay to skip the leveling. Damn, that's good business, Blizzard. Well done. So goal number 1 is pretty simple, but my next 2 goals are a little bit more complicated. Goal number 2 is to reach 2,000 Mythic Plus rating. Funny thing about that, I don't know what it means. I know Mythic Plus dungeons are these infinitely scaling dungeons that get more difficult the higher number you go through, so I assume it has something to do with doing a lot of Mythic Plus. So that's goal number 2. We'll figure it out as we go. And my third and final goal is to defeat the final boss of the first raid of Midnight, the Voidspire. I've raided in Classic WoW before, but I've never raided in Retail, and I've been led to believe that generally it is much harder raiding in Retail than in Classic, which makes sense because Classic's pretty easy. Completing each of these 3 goals should give me a pretty good idea of what Retail World of Warcraft has to offer. But there's one more catch. I want to complete each of these 3 goals playing my favorite class in any game. I will be playing a Protection Paladin. Why aren't you guys? Scary! You see, the thing about Protection Paladins is they are tanks. In dungeons and raids, it is very frequently the tanks who are leading the way. They'll decide the pace of the dungeon, or are often most responsible for completing raid mechanics. Basically, if your tank sucks, your group's gonna fail. And so I guess I'm gonna be a tank. This is going to make playing World of Warcraft probably a lot harder for me, but you know what? I was born hard. And with all that said, I am finally ready to begin my journey into the World of Warcraft. For better or worse, every World of Warcraft expansion has a story, and that story is told to the player through campaign quests, which double as one of the best ways to get to max level, and as we know, max level is when the game really starts. Unfortunately for me, Midnight is the second entry in a trilogy of expansions, and I obviously haven't played through the first part of the story. But don't worry, I did do some brief research, so here's what I've gathered so far. The main bad guy of the story is this hot barefooted mommy named Xelatath. She used to be a dagger, I guess? She leads this purple blob known as the Void in a conquest to consume everything and anything, including the entire planet of Azeroth where World of Warcraft takes place. Her likes include laughing and teleporting away, and her dislikes include moving the plot forward. Do I know who, what, where, when, or why she wants to consume Azeroth? No, I don't understand any of that. I think the Void is just like that. The main good guy of the story, not including ourselves, I guess, because I don't think we count. I don't think players I don't think they really exist in the story, is Illyria Windrunner, sister to Sylvanas Windrunner, who I remember from Warcraft 3. So that's irrelevant. Illyria, I've gathered, is extremely old, but she also dresses like a teenager who just discovered Hot Topic, so it's kind of like a mixed signal situation. She also has a son named Eretor, who we will be working closely with in this expansion, and boy does that suck. Midnight's campaign starts off with us defending the Blood Elf capital of Silvermoon from a massive void attack. We, the player, are sent all over the battlefield to heal the wounded, go talk to some apparently important people that I don't recognize at all because I just got here, and to obviously kill some void bad guys. And this is where I got my first taste of what World of Warcraft combat actually feels like. You know, when you get past level 30 and you have all of your abilities. And let me tell you, I was very confused. I mean, look at all of these buttons on my hotbar. I just threw those on there or moved them around from their default position because remember, I used the level 80 boost that was included with my purchase of the expansion. So I didn't know what any of this was. So my first step to even figuring out how to play World of Warcraft was going through each of these buttons and figuring out exactly how I'm supposed to be using them. But this was made even more difficult by the fact that I also had to figure out my entire talent tree. Every single class in World of Warcraft has a talent tree, and every single spec for every single class also has a talent tree. And then within all of those specs, there are 2 hero talents to choose from that also have their own trees. There's a lot to figure out here, so to even jump into the game itself, I had to make quite a few choices first. This is a little less overwhelming when you're leveling because you'll only get 1 talent point to spend per level, but when you got boosted, all of a sudden you have 70 to choose from. All of these talents can interact with one another, some are passive, some give you new active abilities, and there's just a lot to digest here. Normally I'm a huge fan of talent trees like this that let me go deep and create my own builds, but in this specific case, when I just started the expansion, I was a little bit overwhelmed, and I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I panicked. Blizzard somewhat conveniently offers you what's called a starter build that will just pick a bunch of talents that they think are good for new players right off the bat without you having to make any decisions. So I went with that, guys. I wanted to play the game. I didn't have the brain to figure all this stuff out. Yeah, I'm kind of a baby, but you know what? We went with it. In hindsight, I will say that not picking my own talents was a mistake. It took me a lot longer to figure out what a paladin does. Unfortunately, the road bumps didn't stop there, because as soon as I started getting into combat, I immediately realized I had no idea what any of my many abilities do. So I was just kind of pressing buttons and doing no damage and getting very frustrated. This was so many buttons for me to learn right off the bat. But this is coming off a very controversial change where Blizzard drastically reduced the number of abilities every class has. A lot of people are calling the game too simple now, and I'm over here confused about that. So I feel pretty bad about myself in this moment, but you know, we're gonna get better. I just have to keep telling myself it's gonna get better. The crux of this fight revolves around the ancient source of the Blood Elf's power, called the Sunwell, that Xelatath wants to corrupt and use for her own dastardly deeds. I don't know why she wants to do this, but we can't let that happen. If you're a Warcraft 3 enjoyer like myself, you might recognize the Sunwell from when it got corrupted by Arthas Menethil to resurrect the Lich Kel'Thuzad. So what I'm saying is the Sunwell is not a stranger to getting corrupted, and maybe maybe they should be a little bit more careful with it. After fighting off the void and powering up the Sunwell, we get this actually kind of sick moment where the Sunwell fires a beam of light into the void storm that's raging above Silvermoon. And this single beam is keeping the invasion at bay, if only for a moment. The reason I find this so cool though is because when you finally leave the introduction scenario and enter the open world, you can see this void storm from almost anywhere. It really sets the tone of the magnitude of this invasion and the power of the Sunwell, but it also makes it clear that the safety of the entire city lies on a single defense holding up. So while I still dislike that I'm propped up as this great hero, even though I just got there and I'm still really confused about the story, I can't deny that this moment was cool, and it had me excited to explore more of this story, which is perfect because now it was time to get into the meat and potatoes of the campaign, and therefore, the leveling. Leveling in Midnight takes place in 4 zones. Eversong Woods, a beautiful autumn-colored forest south of Silvermoon, and the Troll Zone of Zul'Aman to the east make up the overworld, while Harandar, a confusing place that I don't understand at all, and the Void Storm zones are in completely separate areas that require portals to access. Each of these zones contains a main storyline that needs to be completed to progress the campaign, but each storyline can be completed in any order you want to progress the story. And let me tell you, the story and quality of these zones vary pretty dramatically. So I'm gonna have a certified YouTube moment.
You are a fast mover. Please have a seat right there.
No, not like that, not like that. I'm gonna make a tier list. The first zone I went to was the Eversong Woods because, I mean, just look at it. I want to live here. Progressing through the story is done the same way you do any quests in almost any MMORPG. You go from exclamation point to question mark to exclamation point to question mark, probably ignoring the quest dialogue and then complaining that the story makes no sense. But we're not the same, you and I. I actually stopped to read the quest text. I actually followed the story. I actually let myself become immersed in this world, and I didn't really care for it. It was really boring. In the Eversong Woods, we work with Eretor to investigate the fallout of the Void invasion, which includes finding a town that's been taken over by a cult of people who are like, oh yeah, I love go Void, look at the Void's feet. Ow, it just hit my hand. The good news is we do get to kill the town's leader in something called a delve, which is kind of like a solo dungeon you can run with an NPC companion, and you know what? I kind of really liked it. The delve itself didn't blow me away with how fun and crazy it was. It was actually really easy and took more time than I thought it should, but having a safe place to get better at my class and see what kinds of mechanics dungeon bosses might have was super cool, and it's exactly the kind of thing I think leveling should do in an MMORPG. Show you the ropes without you inconveniencing other people who already know how to do things. Turns out there are a ton of delves in Midnight, but I'm a big fan of the campaign leading me organically right to one. And speaking of dungeons, while in Eversong, I also decided to do the one dungeon in that zone, Windrunner Spire. This dungeon isn't a part of the campaign story. There's actually a few side quests that lead you there, but I thought that the sooner I get into tanking, the better. This dungeon has you follow the ghost of, sorry, what's that? You don't care about the story of a random dungeon in a World of Warcraft expansion? What are you, stupid? Me and my team headed into a dungeon, which was on normal difficulty. In case you're unaware how dungeons work in retail WoW, there are 3 difficulty levels: normal, heroic, and mythic. Heroic and mythic difficulties can only be accessed at max level, which we aren't. That meant we were doing this dungeon on normal difficulty, which also meant that tanking the dungeon was extremely easy. Normal dungeons in retail WoW just mean you do a ton of damage, you take very little damage, and mechanics are completely optional. If you leave a normal dungeon understanding a boss mechanic, then you probably had too hard of a time with that dungeon. But despite the ease of Windrunner Spire, at no point did this dungeon run feel smooth to me. I'd been playing my class for like an hour and a half when I entered this dungeon, so I had no idea what order to use my abilities, which defensives to use. I hadn't figured out my rotation in any capacity yet, so instead of efficiently building up holy power and spending it, becoming very, very tanky by using my abilities correctly, I was just kind of button mashing and praying things would go well. Sometimes my abilities would just randomly light up, so I'd be like playing whack-a-mole, where if an ability lights up, I'll press it. I assume that was a good thing, but I don't really know. The whole experience felt kind of jittery and off balance, and I just felt uncomfortable the entire time. But because normal dungeons are so easy, you actually will find some people talking during the run. And one of our group members offhandedly said that they bound their rotation to 8. Is this a joke I don't get? Perhaps, but maybe it's something more. Maybe it reveals a hint about how I should be playing this game. Because earlier on, when I opened my spellbook to read all of my abilities, I noticed something in the top right corner. Single button rotation. Surely this couldn't be what I thought it was. One button capable of changing itself at a moment's notice to be every button? A single button to rule them all? I tried to resist the temptation. It would be better if I spent the time to learn my class and execute my rotation myself, right? As we finished the dungeon, I felt hollow. Like I didn't do nearly as well as I could have. As I should have. Press 1 over and over again. Press 1 non-stop. A classic player. This is all you're capable of. I can't do this. At the end of the day, I was happy to have my first tanking experience, but it showed me I had a lot to learn because I knew things would eventually get a lot harder. Overall, the story in Eversong is pretty meh, and the quests by the end had me really, really bored, to be honest, but the zone is so damn nice to look at that I'm gonna put it in the B tier for Blood Elf. After Eversong, I decided to head to Zul'Aman, where we help Lady Liadrin, the leader of the Blood Elf Paladins, genocide the trolls. The good news is that everyone on our side is basically in favor of genocide, and we're the good guys, so this is a good thing. Anyway, this dude, Turelian, who happens to be Eretor's dad and also happens to be voiced by Grog from Critical Role, happens to be a real go-getter, and he excitedly starts the genocide. But then Eretor jumps in front of his sword and gets hit. For some reason, for the rest of this campaign, this will be referred to as Turelian f***ing murdering his own son, when in reality, Eretor looked like a dude trying to commit insurance fraud. Oh, Eretor, we're gonna get to you. I wish you died. We spent the rest of our time in Zul'Aman making friends with the trolls, helping them reconnect with their version of gods called Loa, and getting very flirty with their leader Zul'Jara. Unlike Eversong Woods, this story was actually really interesting to me. I would call it easily the best of any of the zones in Midnight. Meeting these people who have been in conflict with the Blood Elves for thousands of years, working through that and learning more about their civilization and religion was super interesting to me. Zul'Jara's brother, Zul'Jan in particular, made for a great character, representing the opposite viewpoint of Zul'Jara. He still resented the elves for the centuries of bloodshed they caused, and he didn't want to reconnect with the Loa because he felt abandoned by them when they needed them the most. It's a viewpoint we see shared by a good amount of the Amani trolls, and it's really easy to sympathize with. It's a level of depth that is not present in any of the other zone stories, not even a little bit. The bad guys in these stories are too frequently cartoonishly evil to the point that there isn't any way to make them realistically morally gray, and the good guys are just exhausting with how good they are. So the nuance brought to the story by a character like Zul'Jan was awesome, and for that reason, Zul'Aman ends up as one of my favorite zones, despite having one of the worst cutscenes I've seen in any game. Despite that, Zul'Aman is easily going in S tier for, man, I love the trolls. The final two zones, Harandar and the Voidstorm, are tough, because I hated them. Harandar is home to a new playable race called the Harandir. They actually live below the roots of the world tree Teldrassil. If you're a classic player like me, you'll recognize Teldrassil as the Night Elf starting area and the home of Darnassus, the capital of the Night Elves. What you might not know if you're a classic player like me is that something happened to Teldrassil.
Burn it!
Anyway, we're working with a Harandir called Orwena to do something. I really zoned out of the story at this point, guys. This was so boring. I really thought the Harandir were just more trolls until I slowed down and figured out that they're like a whole different thing. So this was, I can't give you the book report on this, but trust me, it was bad. Let's go with bad. I really don't know what it was about Harandar. The whole zone felt bland to me, despite pretty objectively being beautiful to look at. It all felt it just kind of meh. It also didn't really feel like it meshed with the rest of the zones I played through, so I don't know, to me Harandar is the most forgettable zone, kind of by a long shot. There was one good moment in Harandar though, and that's that I tanked my second ever World of Warcraft dungeon, this time the Blinding Veil, which takes place in Harandar. At this point, I had gained a couple levels and started to kind of figure out my rotation, and gameplay became a lot smoother. I started to understand how strong and tanky a prop paladin was during its burst window, and that, get this, I could pull around my own burst window. Smaller pulls when I'm weaker, bigger pulls when I'm stronger. Apparently good tanks do that all the time. Okay, I was told what good tanks actually do is track their teammates' cooldowns too, so that they know when all of their teammates have their big hitting abilities up. But dude, I'm just like staring at my own action bar. You expect me to read anything else anyone is doing? No, absolutely not. But as much as I think the Blinding Veil was kind of a turning point for me understanding my class, Harandar as a whole, it still just kind of loses me. So Harandar goes in D tier. For don't think about Teldrassil burning. It's fine. The Voidstorm is purple. God, I don't like this zone, guys. The Voidstorm is extremely boring to me, and I think that's almost entirely due to how one note the visual design of the zone is. That, and it was also just way less fun to traverse than the 3 previous zones. The only redeeming part is that this zone is really central to the plot that was established in the starting scenario. We work with Eretor and his emo mom to weaken the Void forces, even capturing and working with Decimus, a Dominar who kind of serves as a informant for us, but understandably, some of the people on our side are skeptical, like this guy, Lothraxion. Lothraxion is what's known as a Nathrezim, which I recognize because of the Dreadlords from Warcraft 3. Basically, they're like the purest form of evil, and were partially behind the Burning Legion, a bunch of demons who destroyed a bunch of worlds, and they also were behind the Lich King, an entity responsible for the death of thousands. But Lothraxion's not like them. He's a cute little Nathrezim who loves the light and doesn't like genocide. Unless. So eventually, Lothraxion goes absolutely fucking crazy trying to destroy the Void to the point that we have to run a dungeon and kill him before he puts the entirety of Silvermoon at risk with his desperation to kill the Void. It's cool to see multiple examples in this expansion, but most of all through Lothraxion, that fanatical devotion, even to a force that can be as good as the light, can lead you down a dark path. It paints the main battle of this expansion, the one between the light and the Void, in a more interesting light. And that's a battle that is represented through Eretor, whose father is an extremely devoted paladin of the light, and whose mother is infused with the power of the Void. Which is why I saved the secret 5th storyline for last. Eretor's storyline. Oh right, put Voidstorm in C for... Can't you? I don't care. Eretor's questline doesn't take place in a single zone. It takes place across a few iconic areas from the history of World of Warcraft. Our core mission while traveling with Eretor is to go recover some holy relics to empower the people keeping the Sunwell going, but in reality, we're trying to help Eretor reconcile his feelings about the light and, more importantly, his own father. This journey takes us to Light Soap Chapel, an iconic location in World of Warcraft from vanilla through the Legion expansion. We enter the Scarlet Monastery, a dungeon introduced in vanilla, and kill members of the Scarlet Crusade. The Scarlet Crusade are a long-standing group whose singular purpose is to kill every undead on Azeroth, including the Forsaken, who have been a part of the Horde for decades now. Coming here is a reminder that for as long as World of Warcraft has been around, there have been people using the light to do harm. And finally, we go to the Burning Steps to recover the shattered pieces of Tyrellion's shield, a shield that was originally broken during the events of Warcraft 2. Eretor reforges and attempts to return his father's shield to him, but he refuses it because he's a Ret Paladin now and they don't use shields. And that's where Eretor's questline ends. Maybe I'm just getting nostalgia baited here, even though I didn't play Classic until less than 3 years ago, but Eretor's story really worked for me. I found it smaller and more digestible than the world-ending threat I was instantly presented with in Xal'atath and the Void, and I did enjoy going to all these places I recognized from Classic, because okay, maybe it was a little bit of nostalgia bait. This storyline was so good that I'd almost call it perfect. If it weren't for the fact that I really hate Eretor, this kid, and I say kid lightly because he's like 40, but he acts like he's 12, is so annoying. I don't know if it's his voice actor or just the writing, but every line he delivers is coded in this almost Pixar-level happy tone that when he's trying to portray sadness, it just doesn't come across. Everything feels off with him. So balancing all of that against the quality of the actual story, Eretor's questline goes into F tier for Finish the jobs, really. God. With all 5 storylines done, we have finally completed the leveling campaign for Midnight. And I don't know what I expected. As a new player, the story was still as confusing as ever, where I get called all sorts of big names like champion, even though I've done literally nothing for you people. There are so many characters, and I don't know which I'm supposed to know and not know. It's really hard to keep track of. And I have kind of just a general issue with MMO as a storytelling medium in general, because the player both needs to be central to the story, but also can't be central to the story, which is why you have cutscenes that happen directly after we do something awesome that don't involve us at all. It's all very strange, and you know what? I don't like it very much, but that's over now. Even in the zones I liked, like Zul'Aman, the stories and quests just started to feel tedious, especially just flying from exclamation point to exclamation point. I really struggled to feel immersed or to get myself to care about this story. One night while scrolling through Reddit because I have mental illness, I ended up reading that people were doing a lot of these story quests on ground mounts instead of flying, and I think that's a great way to immerse yourself, and I kind of wish I did that. But the problem is, I would have never thought to do that as a new player. I would have never thought to not choose the flying mount I was introduced to right when I logged in. But regardless, leveling was behind me because with the campaign and a few side quests done, I had hit level 90. And that means finally, after 3 years, I am ready to experience the World of Warcraft endgame. Okay, I actually don't know what to do now. That's me not long after I hit level 90 in World of Warcraft. The moment I realized that the content I expected to be doing, like the Voidspire raid and Mythic Plus dungeons, wouldn't actually release for another 2 weeks. You see, World of Warcraft has content released in phases, and the start of the expansion is apparently called the pre-season. This is actually a reference to how meat tastes before you season it, because it's really f***ing bland. Season 1 starts 2 weeks after the expansion launches and brings with it 2 raids, the single boss Dream Rift raid and the Voidspire, my main objective. It'll also start the Mythic Plus season when I can start working towards my 2000 raiding goal. So I have to spend the preseason getting my character as geared up as possible so I'm ready to go when that content actually comes out. That means getting this number as high as humanly possible. This number is my item level, and it is quite literally the only thing that matters in this entire game. All item level is a measure of how powerful your items are, but despite its simplicity, I hate this number with the burning passion of 1,000 suns. But we'll talk about that later. For now, let's just make the number go up. Weirdly, despite my hatred for item level, I did start to get a little bit excited. This preseason reminded me a little bit of when I think Classic WoW's endgame is at its best. Pre-raid BIS farming. In Classic, before you can walk into a raid, you usually need to spend some time gearing up. You do that by non-stop running a bunch of high-level dungeons that drop set pieces and other extremely good items for your class until you finally have either everything you need or enough to carry your weight in a raid. In Classic Anniversary, I had so much fun staying up late, running Scholomance and Blackrock Depths non-stop, hoping to get just one more upgrade before raid launch. So, you know what? Yeah, I'm in. This could actually be a ton of fun. And unlike Classic, retail has a lot of options for gearing. Like so many. Actually, it might be it might be too many. I was determined in my retail WoW journey to not get sucked into a loop of looking things up, watching tutorials, and just following a strict guide. But what ended up happening is I got a little lost. So after a little bit of just standing there not doing anything with decision paralysis, I finally decided to just go check out Delves, the solo content I was introduced to during the campaign. I felt like it would be nice to have an isolated place to both gear up and continue improving. Delves ramp up in difficulty from tier 1 to tier 11, but the rewards also get better with the increasing difficulty. So I was determined to push these delves as far as I possibly could because I really enjoyed having my little safe space. I managed to get the first few tiers done with absolutely zero trouble. Like, they were actually ridiculously easy, and the rewards ranged from completely useless to pretty okay. But that made sense to me. I'm in the lower half of the tiers, so the rewards are going to kind of match that vibe. I figured I just needed to push a little bit further, and nope. Turns out that I can only do up to tier 7 right now. You see, it turns out in the preseason, delves cap out at tier 7. So no matter how much I want to keep going with delves, because I figured the more challenging they get, the more fun I'll have, I have to stop. I just have to stop playing that. I did run tier 7 a couple more times, but it became clear to me that that was going to be a pretty pointless endeavor, so I decided it was time to look for something other than delves to do. I did decide to look up what the rewards would be like from delves when I could do the higher tiers, and I learned about something called bountiful delves that will give me really good rewards when the season starts, so at least I have that to look forward to. So I shifted my attention to something that was littered all over my world map: world quests. World quests are these special world events that you can clear and then they'll change every few days. Some of these world quests will give you 220 item level gear, which for me is a big upgrade. So I flew around doing a few world quests, specifically hunting down the ones that would give me item upgrades, but I pretty quickly ran into 2 issues. The first issue was that this was horribly boring to me. I was not having fun doing world quests. It felt genuinely like a chore. I think this word is horribly overused, especially by me, but they felt like slop. My brain was turned off while I was doing them, and not in the fun flow state way that you can sometimes get into when you play MMOs, but more in the like, wow, I really wish I was doing something else right now kind of way. The second issue is I very quickly ran out of rewarding world quests to do, and I would have to wait almost 3 days for new world quests to pop up. So once again, a system I was interacting with has locked me out of progression. I mean, at least with delves, I could technically keep running the delve, but with world quests, that was just over. I can't say I missed it too much though, because come on, God, I did not enjoy the world quests. It was just very shocking to me to play a game where so much would just become locked to me after I had interacted with it. I hadn't really experienced something like that in something that wasn't like a mobile game, so it got me pretty frustrated, I'm not gonna lie. Option number 3 for gearing was the brand new prey system a friend told me about. The friend was Google. I have no friends. I know I said I was trying not to Google anything, but honestly, this game, it has so much going on that eventually you're gonna have to look things up, okay? So I caved. With Prey, you're sent off to a zone to hunt down a target assigned to you by this guy, Astalor. Astalor is 2 things: very hot and very freaky. You're basically murdering on his behalf in return for literal anguish, so that's nice. When in your target zone, you slowly uncover their location by doing basically anything. Killing monsters leads to hunt progress, doing world quests leads to hunt progress, disarming traps left by your prey leads to progress. It's actually a great system to have active if you're planning on doing things in that zone anyway. The only catch is that your prey can ambush you at any time you're in that zone. My first couple of preys were very easy. Like, actually a little too easy. The final fight against your prey takes absolutely 0 thought, and what I thought would be the difficult part, the random ambushes, were unbelievably predictable, so I was able to save my heavy hitting abilities, Avenging Wrath and Divine Toll, for those moments to quickly get rid of them. But the worst part is that after completing 2 hunts, it stopped giving me gear. The silver lining was I unlocked hard mode prey that was still easy and gave me even better gear, but that was also time gated after I did only 2 of them. I was lucky enough to get a high item level weapon and ring from the hard mode preys, but I felt really frustrated that I was running into 4 stoppage points at every turn. I had now encountered 3 systems with strict time gating, one of which I had to wait 2 days to continue doing, and 2 of which I had to wait until the weekly reset on Tuesday to keep interacting with. So at this point, I was just getting frustrated with World of Warcraft in general. These weekly caps I felt weren't clearly communicated to me, and were also all over the game to the point that I felt like I was getting in trouble for wanting to play World of Warcraft. When I asked some actual friends what I should be doing now that I had been locked out of some of the better gearing options, they all agreed that the best move was to make an alt. A new character to take from level 10 to the max level to fill the time between resets. There are 2 reasons I would want to do this. The first is obvious. I would be able to do delves, prey, and world quests again while getting meaningful rewards, just on a different character. But the second reason is that I could take that character from level 80 to 90 without doing the campaign. Instead, I could complete side quests in each zone to gain renown with that zone's faction. Renown is gained by doing basically anything in a zone, like world quests, side quests, discovering scenic locations, etc. There are tons of cosmetic rewards for each level of renown you reach, but importantly, each of the 4 major factions of the expansion also give you a free piece of high-level gear at certain renown levels, which basically means whether I like it or not, I'm going to be doing the side quests in every zone, so I might as well level up an alt while I do them. So that's what I did. I spent the rest of the week taking a rogue from level 1 to 90, doing every side quest along the way once I hit level 80, and eventually, I hit the renown for a beautiful new necklace, trinket, helmet, and belt. Conveniently, those items were available to both my rogue and paladin, so I geared up 2 characters for the price of 1, and any other alts I make will have access to this gear right away. And with that, we had reached the end of my first full week of World of Warcraft, the first week of the preseason. And it was, you know, I wanted this video, especially this portion of the video, to be about my progression through World of Warcraft. And trust me, I was not coming in here to make some sort of hit piece on how World of Warcraft sucks. And I don't really think it does, even right now. But it's so frustrating that at every turn, the game seems to have fought against me playing it. Fought against me deeply interacting with a system, preferring me to instead have a really shallow and kind of short experience. To be absolutely fair, this might be an issue of my expectations going into the game. But at the end of the day, all of these weekly caps made me feel like I was playing the game incorrectly. But what really frustrates me is that if my expectations were wrong going in, a week later, after playing the game kind of a lot, I still don't know what World of Warcraft is. World of Warcraft is an MMORPG. You look it up and that's what it says. So if I went into this game with the expectations of an MMORPG, I would have thought there would be deep, meaningful character progression. But over the course of its history, World of Warcraft has shifted away from being an MMORPG. This is best exemplified in the way its leveling system has both been sped up to the point of being trivial, while also being so bad that it feels like it takes forever. For that reason, you'll often hear people say that World of Warcraft is more of an ARPG, like Path of Exile or Diablo 2. And at first glance, that kind of makes sense. The game is all about this big, fast-paced, smooth combat that feels really, really good. But the more I've been playing the game, the less I see how that makes any sort of sense. I play a ton of ARPGs. My last video on this channel was a 1-hour video on Diablo 2. But if you've ever played an ARPG, you know that there is much more meaningful progression in those types of games than there is in World of Warcraft. Even as that genre has moved to be more seasonal, you can still deeply and freely invest your time into your character, expressing your playstyle through your build. And most importantly, expressing your playstyle through your itemization. I'm not gonna lie to you, this is kind of a side rant, but if World of Warcraft is an ARPG, why are the items so boring? I've already said this, but the only thing on your character that matters at all is this number, your item level. If an item has a higher item level, there is a 99.9% chance that it is a better item to wear. There's a few reasons for that. One is that the stats in World of Warcraft are just kind of boring. The second is that items very rarely, if ever, have cool additional effects that mean an item that might have worse stats on its face are actually better for the type of build you've made, or maybe even cause you to reconsider your build altogether. You will occasionally see trinkets that do unique things, but even still, the best trinkets of the game are ones that just give you stat bonuses every so often, so that's kind of boring too. But the reason I'm vilifying item levels specifically here isn't because other games don't have item levels, they actually all have item levels, but none of them make item level as central to your character as WoW does, making it visible not only to you right on your character screen, but to any group you might apply to. So your character progression at endgame is literally just about having one single number go up, and it's not deeper than that. And that doesn't feel very ARPG-y to me. All of this is to say that by the 1 week point, I was hoping to understand what WoW is so I could start enjoying it for what it is, but I still don't really know what it's trying to be. But regardless, it was time for me to move on to week 2 of preseason, a week in which I didn't play my paladin all that much. Most of my playtime was geared towards the new Mythic dungeons. Mythic dungeons, normally called Mythic Zeros by the community because they're the step right before you get to Mythic Plus dungeons, are just harder versions of heroic dungeons. And for the preseason, these drop the best possible gear you can get. But I don't even care about the gear that these dungeons drop, because let me tell you, this was the most fun I have been having in World of Warcraft since I started. Unlike normal and even heroic dungeons, these dungeons aren't quite pushovers. They're not the hardest thing you'll ever do, but you do probably need to start understanding some boss mechanics and executing them correctly, or else your group will wipe. And I really like that. I like thinking when I play a game. One of my favorite memories from this past week is doing the Blinding Veil on a Mythic 0, and me and my group actually struggled to kill the final boss. We wiped twice because none of us knew the mechanics. Turns out I needed to correctly position the boss so that the orbs wouldn't reach him and power him up before the other party members could absorb those orbs. And we also learned that when he does this beam attack, you need to point it at the corpse of ads he had previously summoned, or else he would resurrect them. Once we figured those two things out, we got the boss down no problem, and it felt really, really great because while I can constantly criticize the way this game's progression works, what I can't doubt is that skill progression, your own personal skill, still feels really good in World of Warcraft. I was in Discord with a friend when we ran this dungeon, and I literally asked if we could run Blinding Veil again. And that's when I learned that you can only run each Mythic 0 dungeon once per week. Honestly, my gear wasn't all that bad by the end of the preseason. There was just one more thing I had to do to put the cherry on top. Get someone to craft me a new weapon. World of Warcraft has tons of professions. It always has. There are gathering professions like mining, herbalism, and skinning. These are straightforward and they make you some easy money while you're going around the world questing. The gathering professions feed resources to people who decide to go with crafting professions like blacksmithing and leatherworking. These professions create powerful gear and enhancements, some of which are even best in slot early on in the season. Unfortunately for me, these crafting professions are extremely fucking confusing. Anyway, the only currency I really needed to get my best weapon crafted was something called a Spark of Radiance. You can get up to 2 per week because obviously they're capped, and they have to be sent to the crafter to get your item crafted. To decide what I wanted crafted and how to get it crafted, I just looked up a guide for protection paladins, saw what the best in slot crafted weapon was, got all the materials for that weapon, asked in trade chat for someone to make it for me, got like 100 whispers from bots in less than a second, chose one of them at random, gave them a big tip, and boom. I had my best in slot weapon, and all it took was just so much confusion and frustration. This system really turned me off to the game, guys. It's so crazy that I'm lucky enough to have some close friends who play this game to lean on when I have questions without getting sucked into a pit of 30-minute YouTube tutorials, but even still, this was all so exhausting. I can't imagine being someone with no connections to World of Warcraft trying to figure any of this out. In any case, at the time I'm recording this, Mythic Plus comes out tomorrow, so I'm excited to just finally get to experience World of Warcraft for real, for the first time. But for now, I'm gonna log out and go to sleep. You know, when I started this video 2 weeks ago, I expected to spend maybe 2 or 3 weeks total just playing a lot of World of Warcraft so I could tell you guys, hey, I did so much in the World of Warcraft endgame. It actually is fun. Come play it. And you know what I've found is that it's week 3, and I haven't even really played the endgame yet. Is this on me for not looking at the endgame calendar and seeing that Mythic Plus doesn't release until for some reason 1 week after the season begins? Maybe. But let's not talk about that. Instead, let's focus on what we can control, and that's that I have another week of Mythic 0 in front of me, and I really liked Mythic 0, so that's cool, and that the raids, both the Dream Rift and the Voidspire, did launch. So at least I can start working on that. There's also the release of Nightmare Prey, the 3rd difficulty for the Prey system, which I've been kind of enjoying, albeit finding it pretty simple, so maybe that will also bring a new challenge and maybe even some new upgrades for me. So you know, despite my disappointment, I actually feel kind of excited for what's to come. My first stop was to try out the new Nightmare Prey system, which I'm sorry to report is also extremely easy. I don't know if it's just because I'm a tank, but I had absolutely no trouble. My health never even got below like 90%, so this was stupidly simple. I did decide to do this hunt though while just kind of exploring the world, mining some minerals for money and doing some extra world quests for some reason. And I did enjoy Prey as kind of like a little side dish. And that actually led me to discovering something completely new. I killed a rare mob and was rewarded with 50 coffer key shards. I don't know what those are. Actually, if I'm being totally honest, I was upset when I got them because I swear to God, my brain couldn't handle any more currencies, but actually, these ones are good. It turns out these coffer key shards, when you get 100 of them, turn into restored coffer keys that you use to open chests at the end of a bountiful delve to get the increased reward. So these for me, are one of the more exciting parts of the expansion launch. Sorry, I meant Season 1 launch, but I guess it is kind of the expansion launch in a lot of ways. Finding these had me actually excited to keep exploring and doing things around the world, because now I had made the connection. You do things around the world, you get coffer key shards, you go do a delve. That's a gameplay loop I can actually get behind. My Nightmare Prey fight also ended up giving me coffer key shards and a weapon downgrade, so thanks, Prey. But I didn't care. I just wanted to collect as many coffer keys as I could so I could run a bunch of delves. So that's what I did. I finished a second Nightmare Prey for another downgrade, realized I was once again capped on getting the best gear rewards for that, in less than an hour of playing by the way, and decided to try my luck at some of the bountiful delves. And on my very first run, I got a 250 item level wrist upgrade. This hit my system like a literal drug. Listen, I know I criticize the item level system a lot, and I'm probably gonna keep doing that, but at the end of the day, I have the same caveman ooga booga brain that you all have. I see a number go up, and it makes other things go up. No. So at this point, despite all my doubts and frustrations from the week before, I was fully bought back into World of Warcraft. I was ready to make that number go as high as it needs to for me to tank the Void Spire. So I decided to set myself an item level goal. And to pick that number, I asked the only person I knew I could trust. Okay, interesting. So I think I'll just do a bunch of bountiful delves, some more mythic zeros, and ignore that completely. My next bountiful delve took place in a mushroom-themed fight pit, and while I love it thematically, I was less in love with the trinket it gave me. I also managed to snag minor cape and necklace upgrades in a few of my other delves. This is also when I learned about using those crests I've been getting from certain quests and especially delves to upgrade my gear. This is pretty embarrassing looking back, but for a long time I thought when my item said Adventurer 2 out of 6 or Veteran 1 out of 6, that's just how good they happen to be, like a random roll basically. But instead what you could do is take Adventurer crests, one of the many currencies, and upgrade Adventurer items using them at this Dragon Lady. So for 20 crests you could turn a 2 out of 6 Adventurer item into a 3 out of 6 Adventurer item. This increases its stats and therefore its item level. This was super fun until I hit a moment I think a lot of RPG players hit. I was spending my Champion Dawn crests and I started to feel like, wait a second, these are capped at 200 a week. What if I'm wasting them? What if I'm permanently setting back my account because I'm misusing my champion crests? Would I have felt this way regardless because I'm just a prototypical RPG player who harvests consumables like nobody's business? Probably, but this was another case where weekly caps really started to negatively impact the way I was experiencing the game. And for that reason, I actually stopped upgrading my gear entirely for a little while until I did some more research into how I could best use this limited resource I had. Of course, I decided to head back to Bountiful Delves. I had started the day with 8 coffer keys and I had 4 left. I saw no issue burning through those today before figuring out how to get more keys for later. So as I looked at my map to try and figure out which Bountiful Delve I wanted to do next, I realized there were no Bountiful Delves to do next. I had done all 4 that were randomly selected for today, and if I wanted to do more, I had no choice but to just wait until tomorrow when new Bountiful Delves were selected. It was another cap. But you know what? I had other things I could work on, so I wasn't too upset. I decided instead to go back to Prey because I could get 75 coffer key shards per hunt. And yet, after completing a hunt that had coffer key shards listed as a reward, I didn't get any. So I did another hunt, once again with coffer key shards listed as a reward, and once again, I got 0. After Googling what was going on, I learned, unfortunately, that characters are limited to 600 coffer key shards a week, meaning they can do 6 bountiful delves a week. The extra 2 I got were from a special delve quest that starts with Season 1, so that's why I had 8 this week, but typically you'll only get 6. I don't know why I was still getting coffer key shards listed as a possible reward when I was capped. That was frustrating, but more so, I'm just really disappointed that once again, for like the millionth time, a system I was really enjoying interacting with and wanted to really interact deeply with had just stopped me and told me, no, you have to wait longer if you want to do that. But you know, maybe I'm just used to it at this point because I wasn't upset for all that long. Maybe it's because I remembered something special about Season 1 that I completely forgot about until like right now. This bad boy right here is the Great Vault, and believe it or not, the entirety of progression in World of Warcraft relies on this. By completing certain activities every week at certain difficulties, you'll get rewards on the next reset, so next Tuesday, from the Great Vault. There are 9 slots to fill in total, 3 from defeating raid bosses, 3 from completing dungeons, and 3 from completing delves. So with my delves basically covered for now by virtue of me grinding out a bunch of them, I decided to head back towards Mythic 0 dungeons because I really enjoyed those. Mythic Zeros are, up to this point in my WoW endgame journey, my favorite thing to do in the game. They're just hard enough for me as a new tank that I have to pay attention and understand the mechanics, but not so hard that I feel like my brain is going to leak out of my ears by trying to stay alive. Not that you asked, but my 3 favorite dungeons right now are Magister's Terrace, Murder Row, and Windrunner Spire, which also happen to be the dungeons I've run the most between all of the difficulties. But honestly, I've really been enjoying every single dungeon on Mythic 0 difficulty. Well, except for the Den of Nalarak, I'd rather die than ever run that dungeon again. And you know what? Maybe it's just the difficulty level of these dungeons, but I really felt like I was starting to understand Prot Paladin. I was popping defensive abilities proactively when I knew a certain attack was about to hit me, instead of reactively when my health dropped. I was confidently moving through dungeons, controlling pulls, and most importantly, staying alive. Doing my weekly Mythic Zeros had me so excited for Mythic Plus next week. I felt prepared, and even though they only gave me a single minor cape upgrade, I felt strong. Like I could take on anything that came my way. Like I could take on the Void Spire. For those of you who don't know, raids are kind of like dungeons, except you go in with 20 to 25 people and the bosses typically are much more difficult. A usual raid setup will have 2 tanks, 4 to 5 healers, and then the rest of the slots filled with damage dealers. The reason you want 2 tanks, I've learned, is because basically every raid boss in World of Warcraft can be summed up like this. The boss hits the active tank and puts a debuff on the active tank. Now the active tank can probably handle a few stacks of that debuff, but once he has too many, you're gonna wanna switch so he has time to recover. So we get a bunch of stacks and then we switch. And so the other tank now is getting stacked. This is a really great illustration. I'm really proud of myself for this. I hope you like it. It's important that the tanks do their job correctly because usually if a tank messes up their mechanic, which probably involves absorbing a lot of damage, it's very likely the entire raid will die in one shot. So it's all on me. It's worth noting that most sane players, if they're going to do raids in World of Warcraft, join a guild that enjoys doing raids so they can hop into a Discord server together, talk on voice, communicate, just generally have a good organized time. I didn't do that. I didn't do that. So we're gonna do what's known as pugging the raid. Pugs are groups of completely random players that get together and try to take down raids. They are extremely unreliable and usually is where you'll hear the most heinous things you've ever heard in your life. I did think it would be good to have at least one friend I could rely on who could maybe coach me through some things I was missing as I went through this raid. And that friend is Theorywise. He is a former cutting-edge Mythic raider. He told me to tell you guys that. So he and I started a group and we headed towards the Void Spire. The first boss of the Void Spire is Imperator Aversion. He summons 3 adds on a tic-tac-toe board, and you as the tank have to position the boss over 2 of those adds while absorbing a massive hit. If you do so correctly, only 1 add will finish claiming a space, and the cycle will repeat. The goal is simply to kill him before he claims 3 in a row. It's really not that hard. Okay, so my first few attempts didn't go great, but we did get kind of close, and I think I did the mechanics correctly, so hopefully it was just a matter of getting a bit more damage dealt. Hey, Editor Idol here. Guess I'm really a tank now, because not only am I blaming my teammates for my problems, I was also making a pretty massive mistake during this boss that I didn't notice until I was watching the footage back. You see this little icon on the boss? That's a buff he gets from being too close to one of the tic-tac-toes he summons. That buff not only makes him deal 75% more damage, it also makes him take 99% less damage. So me and the other tank were doing a certified bad job. This is probably the reason that first pug group completely fell apart and we had to rebuild from scratch. But luckily, the second group went much smoother. Probably because I accidentally did the mechanic right this time. Just like that, my first raid boss ever was down. And I tanked it. I know it sounds lame, but I did feel kind of proud of myself in this moment. Through all the MMOs I've played, I've never played a tank, and I've definitely never tanked something like a raid. So even though we were only 1 boss down out of 6 total, I was happy, but there was still obviously a lot more work to be done. The second boss is equally simple. This boss is a slam attack, and the 2 tanks need to take turns absorbing the damage from the slam attack. This is really simple and shouldn't cause too many problems, which is why I died instantly. And also the raid wiped. Genuinely, I have no idea what happened. I've watched this back a few times, and I'm sure someone can explain it to me, but I'm lost. I don't know how I went from full health to dead here. The crazier part is after making literally 0 adjustments, the second time, we killed the boss pretty easily. So before I knew it, we were 2 out of 6 on the Voidspire raid. These bosses may not have been hard, but it was a real confidence boost just to get any bosses down at all while I was tanking. It especially helped that throughout this raid, me and the other tank I was working with were constantly communicating with each other. So the raid moved on to the third boss, where after moving the boss away from some orbs and dancing around lasers, we were able to down him in 1 shot. At this point, I was on a high. We were halfway through the raid. Me and this other tank were vibing. We finally didn't wipe to a boss even once. I was on top of the world. So far, this was the most fun I had ever had in retail WoW. I was thinking, damn, we might even be able to kill the final boss today, which I was warned going in was potentially unlikely. But I don't know, after these first 3 bosses, I really felt like we could do anything. That was until... Meet Veilgore and Ezorak. These are 2 dragons that need to be fought and killed at the same time. They bring with them multiple mechanics, many of which can instantly wipe a raid, no questions asked. They probably caused more groups to disband than any other boss in the game, and unfortunately, our group would be no different. Me and the other tank each took 1 dragon, but unfortunately, it would not be long until a mechanic was messed up and the entire raid wiped. Unlike our other failures, on this one, we were not particularly close to killing the dragons. And unsurprisingly, after just 1 wipe, players started to leave. But we did fill the spots, and we went back. And we wiped again. And so more people left the group. We pulled 1 more time, undermanned, in a desperate attempt to see if we could pull off a miracle. Me and the tank even came up with a strategy to swap which dragon we were fighting to see if that helped. But since I hadn't tanked Ezorak before, I completely messed up one of the mechanics where he shoots an orb that explodes into this giant pool. I unfortunately aimed it in a really bad spot and caused the other group to die immediately, and that's entirely on me. I don't know what happened. I had a brain fart and I sent that orb in the worst possible place I could have. And that was the last pull we did. A couple of days later, me and Theorywise got together to take on the Dream Rift raid, a raid with only 1 boss and honestly very few mechanics. It took a couple of tries for everyone to figure out what they had to do, but we did get it done. Killing this boss though just didn't feel that special to me. Maybe it's because the fight was extremely simple or because the Dream Rift wasn't a part of my end goal for this video, but I just felt disappointed. Disappointed mostly in myself for failing so horribly on those dragons. I felt like the reason that group fell apart. It's a feeling I've genuinely never had playing video games before. Having never played competitive multiplayer games, I've never had the feeling of letting a group of people on the internet down. Well, except for everyone who watches my videos. I imagine you're all pretty disappointed in me. I haven't raided since defeating the Dream Rift. I haven't gone back to the Voidspire, and to be honest, I think I just kind of needed a break in general from World of Warcraft. In a few days from when I'm recording this, Mythic Plus does actually release, and as someone who's primarily played MMOs like RuneScape, I don't know if I'm ready for the competitiveness that that's going to bring out in people. The weekly reset has arrived, and with it, I get my first ever Great Vault opening. It's kind of insane to see this mass of people who are all here for the same thing, to like basically pull the lever on a slot machine that determines if they're in a good mood today or not. And I'm one of them. Look at me now, guy who didn't know how to press buttons. Now we're addicted to gambling. My vault was nothing special, but I was lucky enough to find these legs, which are a part of my tier set. Tier sets have been around for as long as World of Warcraft has been around. They're special items that, unsurprisingly, when you combine a few of them, have a set effect. It was a little bit strange for me to find a tier piece in my Great Vault because I thought tier only dropped in raids, but it turns out in retail WoW, it's a whole different thing. You can get all of your tier pieces without ever stepping foot in a raid. It's crazy. I can't take credit for figuring this out. I did have my hand held by Theory-Wise when this happened, but I picked my tier legs from my Great Vault and then went over to something called the Catalyst, where you can convert a piece of gear into tier. So you get tier gear for gear. Get it? Apparently you can only do this like every 2 weeks or something. I don't know, man. I don't actually understand how World of Warcraft players can figure all of this out. This is insane. What the hell? But the good news was, by doing this, I'd achieved what's known as my 2 set, by getting the first 2 pieces of my tier and having the set effect. But the Great Vault has one more surprise for you. Because this was the first week of Mythic Plus, every Great Vault gave you what's known as a keystone. A keystone is what lets you access a Mythic Plus dungeon, and every keystone has 2 things: a dungeon and a level. The keystone I got was a +2 Magister's Terrace, so that's where my Mythic Plus journey would begin. So Mythic Plus dungeons obviously get harder the higher level they are, but there's also one more catch to them. You have to kill every single boss and a certain number of regular monsters all within the time limit in order to complete the dungeon. That means which packs of monsters you decide to fight and ignore become crucial to timing the dungeon. For this, there are tons of websites and guides that will post routes for you to follow that are proven to work. I didn't know about any of that. We were going in raw. We took down the first couple of bosses with no trouble, and we even easily handled the chaos of the third boss. And by some miracle, we got to 100% of the monsters defeated right before the final boss, which also happened to be a breeze. My first ever Mythic Plus dungeon really could not have gone better. I know it was only a +2, one of the easiest Mythic Plus keys I could possibly do, but I felt accomplished. The failures of the raid were behind me. This whole piece of content I was actually a little bit worried going into wasn't so bad. I even got a little boot upgrade as a reward, and my keystone, the item you use to enter a mythic dungeon, was upgraded from a +2 Magister's Terrace to, it's a level 5 AA.
Yeah, it's awful.
Ooh. Let me explain. The cool thing about Mythic Plus is only 8 total dungeons are in the pool on any given season, and of those 8, 4 are dungeons from the current expansion, like Magister's Terrace, but 4 are revamped dungeons from previous expansions. This is unironically a really cool way to reuse the mountains of old content World of Warcraft is sitting on top of, but it also means I have to tank dungeons I have literally never seen before. So all of my familiarity from Mythic Zeros and normal dungeons was out the window, and for that reason, the confidence I gained was instantly reset to 0. But I knew that the only real way for me to learn was by doing, so it was time to lock in. The journey to 2000 Mythic Plus rating starts now. Alcathar Academy went down with plenty of time to spare, and I'm not gonna lie to you, with 2 Mythic Plus dungeons down, including one I had never run before, I was feeling pretty damn good about myself. I even kind of felt like I could push way higher than +5, maybe going for +10s or +11s. Everything about Prot Paladin and pulling and my defensives was all falling into place. My key was upgraded to a +7 Skyreach, another one of the old dungeons that I had never run before, but given the success I just had, I had no hesitation getting a group together and jumping right into it. My imposter syndrome was gone. I'm a real tank now. I'm not even joking. That's actually me right after I ran that Skyreach. I was like, oh, I gotta record my reaction, and that was genuinely how I felt. It was actually so embarrassing to walk around a dungeon naked, having to go all the way outside when you're near the end of the dungeon, get someone to get a repair mount for you, then slowly walk back through the dungeon. It was genuinely mortifying, man. I can't believe it. The craziest part is that we still timed the key. We made it through. I don't even get that. That was a miracle. But, and you're probably not gonna be surprised to hear this, after that experience, I logged off for a while. If I'm being honest, I didn't really want to log on again at all. I've mentioned it already, but the games I've played have always been extremely casual, or if they're challenging, they're single player. So I was not used to embarrassing myself in front of other real people, the level to which I just embarrassed myself. But that dungeon did make me realize something. I was so woefully unprepared to tank Mythic Plus. I didn't know where to go or what the monsters did or anything. I was extremely ignorant. What I knew is that to play World of Warcraft, I can't believe I'm saying this, I had to do my homework. So that's exactly what I did. I looked up routes, watched guides, practiced my rotation on target dummies to better understand my paladin's defensive toolkit. I even read through and changed all of my talents for the first time since I picked the starter build at the start of the game. This might sound like overkill to you, and I know a lot of players could pick this up faster and better than me, but for me, this is what I had to do to feel prepared. And it worked. Level 6 Pit of Sauron, handled easily. Level 8 Seat of the Triumvirate. The final boss was a little clunky, but we handled it. Level 9 Magister's Terrace. My health bar may have felt like a yo-yo, but I stayed calm and we timed a key with room to spare. Level 8 Mycera Caverns, taken down. A level 8 Nexus Point Zenith, where I managed to perfectly land us at 100% just before the final boss, timed with over 8 minutes left. And finally, a laid-back +5 Windrunner Spire, an easy, relaxed key to finally get me 2,000 rating. Dude, 2,088 rating. Holy shit. Despite some real bumps in the road, that was so easy. The second of my 3 goals were down. It's kind of crazy for me to rewatch that clip of saying it was so easy to hit 2,000 rating because just a few days before, I was lying on the floor crying about how hard it was. And the crazy part is that, yeah, it was kind of easy. When I put in the extra work that is honestly kind of required to be a tank in Mythic Plus, things just started to fall into place. But don't take me calling it easy for me saying that I'm not proud of myself, because I am. I was really, really bad at this before, and in a matter of just a week, I managed to improve enough to hit 2,000 rating. It's funny that I can still look at these clips and see a lot of stuff I'm doing wrong, and still, I am one of the worst tanks in the game, I am sure. You don't have to tell me that. But I was so happy to have improved because I put in work, and I started to understand why people like competitive games like WoW. I guess what I'm saying is, yeah, WoW really is a hero shooter like Overwatch, isn't it? Because it's all about individual skill progression. I feel like that might be a controversial statement, but I'm gonna stick with it, and you know what? It works. I liked it. I had a good time with that. That said, if you've played World of Warcraft, you might know there's a notorious tank shortage in Mythic Plus. Yeah, it's because it takes actually like a lot of work to even be a bad tank. So, and if you are a bad tank, you are going to be told some really heinous things. So, you know, it's not for everyone. It might not even be for me, but hey, I'm making a video, so like and subscribe. Good. But all of this means there's only one thing left to be done. One mountain left to climb. One place I still needed to earn my redemption. The last time I was here, I had no clue what I was doing. I didn't really understand my class. I didn't really understand tanking. And most importantly, I didn't even have a Mythic Plus rating at all. But I'm a different man now. I'm a 2,000 rated Mythic Plus tanking god, and today, all 6 bosses in this raid die. The difference was felt immediately. Maybe it's because everyone had way better gear now or had a week to see the raid mechanics, but the first 3 bosses went down without a single wipe. Me and the other tank were communicating non-stop, making sure we knew what the other had to do. Luckily, we had both tanked those 3 fights successfully before, but like me, he had never taken down the dragons, or the 2 bosses that followed. So as we approached the site of my failure, we were both entering unknown territory. But on the very first pool, we wiped. For a lot of pug groups, failing on these dragons who had become infamous for completely ending runs, this would have been it. And we did have a couple of people leave, but instead of sitting there quietly worrying, I and a few other people took charge. I set down a ground marker to tell people where to go if they were targeted by the breath mechanic, the attack that most commonly wipes groups. Another player set an icon for where everyone should be grouped the majority of the fight. Everyone resurrected, rebuffed themselves, and on the second pool, we executed every single mechanic almost perfectly. did such a good job on this fight that at the time that we killed the last dragon, no one was dead. Well, except for theory-wise, the former Mythic raider. With the dragons down, me and the other tank were officially in unknown territory, but I had faith that we would figure it out. This fight required tanking 3 different enemies, swapping when they used their powerful judgment attack and positioning them around the room when they started casting ultimates. It wasn't the easiest fight to understand, but I just focused on what I could control, and somehow, these 3 paladins fell on our very first try. Looking back at the footage now, we made kind of a lot of mistakes, but you know what? It's a normal raid, that's allowed. And now we were down to just one last boss. One fight to officially consider this challenge completed. The only thing that stood in my way was Illyria Windrunner, the emo mommy herself. I had never seen this fight before, and neither had the majority of our pug group, but the vibes going in were absolutely immaculate. Me and the tank continued communicating. The group was making jokes, we were asking questions and getting help, and it was honestly kind of heartwarming. Where the vibes of past groups had just been absolutely rancid, this one had me wanting to succeed not just for me, but for everyone in this damn group. Before long, we started the pool. Phase 1 was simple. We just had to kill 3 adds while the other tank occupied the attention of the next closest add. Phase 2, however, was a little bit more involved. One tank had to keep Illyria to the center while the ad she summoned was killed on the outside, but every so often, we had to tank swap, where I would pull the ad into the center and he would pull Illyria to the outside. Did I really understand what was happening? No. But did we finish Phase 2? Absolutely. Finally, there's Phase 3, where the arena splits into 3 chunks, and after a certain amount of time passes, the chunk you're fighting on is consumed by Void and you have to switch to a new chunk. This phase is purely a DPS check. If you can't kill it fast enough, you wipe. Or your tanks could mess up a mechanic where you have to break a tether at the right time to not do too much raid-wide damage all at once. Yeah, that's my bad. We were so close. 8% health away from clearing Illyria on our first try. Dying here, this close to finishing the fight, sucked, especially in a pug where the group could fall apart at any moment. But man, I got so lucky with the group we formed. People were taking responsibility instead of pointing fingers, celebrating how far we got on the first pool, pointing out corrections to make for the next pool. It was awesome. Everyone was working together on getting this fight down, helping anyone who was confused with clarification on mechanics, including pointing out to us tanks how we can better handle the tethering mechanics. In my mind, this is what an MMO is in its most ideal state. A bunch of people working together to overcome a challenge and ultimately, hopefully, get rewarded for it. And I was determined to make sure these people got their rewards. It was done. Illyria went down. Despite all the bumps in the road, I hit 2k rating. I defeated the final boss in the Void Spire, both as a tank. But more importantly than my personal goals, killing that final boss is one of my favorite MMO memories I have had in years. Not because of the difficulty level or the rewards or anything like that, but because of the group of people I killed it with. A group of total randoms. Seeing everyone congratulate each other in the chat was just awesome, man. I really enjoyed it. This past month, fully investing myself into World of Warcraft was full of ups and downs, and a lot of times I really considered just scrapping this entire video because I was either frustrated with the game or thought I wasn't good enough. But now I accomplished everything I wanted to. I think about World of Warcraft all the time. I've even started watching some World of Warcraft content creators. I'm watching the Race to the World first as I'm recording this video. I'm a whole different person now. I'm probably a worse person. It's also funny that by watching those content creators, I've learned that this was apparently the easiest Mythic Plus season ever. So, that doesn't make me feel great about my accomplishment. A friend of mine also sent me an article that more tanks are dying this season than ever too. And I can't help but feel responsible for that. But maybe the most surprising thing about all of this is I kept playing World of Warcraft after I finished my goals. I killed the super special solo-only Delve boss on the hardest difficulty. That felt really cool. I kept tanking Mythic Plus dungeons, including an absolute disaster in Algathar Academy. I hate that dungeon. I even logged back onto my rogue for a little bit. I got it to over 240 item level, which it's not good anymore, but that was good when I got it there. This is a game I have extremely complicated feelings about, and I probably always will. It's not an MMO, and it's, I don't think, an ARPG, but it is unique, and it's something you can definitely have a lot of fun with if you're in the right mindset for it. But I don't think I'll ever personally be able to get really invested into World of Warcraft because of the sheer amount of weekly caps that stop me from feeling like I'm able to play the game when I want to, and also just how competitive it is just not a mood I'm always in. But regardless, I ended up feeling much more positive about WoW at the end of the day than I thought I would. So, yeah, play World of, or don't. I'm not going to tell you to play or not play World of Warcraft. What you should play is my Patreon song, and then go to my Patreon, patreon.com/idle, and then give me all your money. Give me your money.
Hey, you're a patron. Thank you so much for your support. Hey, you're a patron. I like you very much, cause hey, you're a patron. Patreon is where you're at. You went to the URL in the description and you gave me your money, and that's pretty neat. Hey, you're a patron. Thank you so much for your support. Hey, you're a patron. I like you very much, cause hey, you're a patron. Patreon is where you're at. You went to the URL in the description and you gave me your money, and that's pretty neat.